All right, what's going on, everyone? So it has been a rough spring for the Russian armed forces, the soldiers specifically, the ones forced to charge the front in Ukraine. More than 35,000 of them were killed or seriously wounded in the month of March alone. It's a new record. That is a staggering number. Like, long ago, we stopped being able to compare Russian losses to anything the United States has experienced in modern warfare. 35,000 in a month is insane. Again, killed or seriously wounded, as in not coming back to the fight anytime soon. And these aren't just estimates that are thrown out there and, we dropped a bomb or we fired this many artillery rounds. That generally equates to this many casualties. No. These are kills that are verified on video. So according to Ukrainian President Zelensky, he said, quote, Russian losses in March reached the highest level of the war. Only due to our drone strikes, 33,988 Russian soldiers were killed or seriously injured, and another 1,363 occupiers were eliminated by artillery and other strikes. In other words, there have been more than 35,000 Russian losses in a single month, and these are clearly confirmed losses. We have video footage of every such strike in our system. We've got a lot of that footage too. I mean, not 33,000 strikes. Andrew Perpetua probably ran through all of that footage, or at least all the publicly available footage to document all of his data. But I'm not a math guy, but that's greater than 95% of casualties during the month of March being caused by drones. If people are kind of trying to figure out like how much of an impact drones are having in this war, that's it right there. It would be significant if drones were 10% of casualties, 20%. If it approached 50%, it would be groundbreaking. 95+% in the month of March due to drones. That is the war that is being fought right now. In fact, an interesting aspect here is both Russia and Ukraine are playing this kind of game of cat and mouse, because there are areas where each side is faster to innovate or comes up with new techniques where they're just able to outdo the other for a period of time. And generally what happens is, say, Russia will come up with a tactic. The fiber optics was a good example, where Russia was really the first one that started to use that in significant numbers. So then Ukraine picked up on it, and now Ukraine uses fiber optics in large numbers. So it's this kind of constant back and forth, which is why I thought it would be worth getting into an assessment listed today from a Ukrainian milblogger talking about the challenges that they face and some possible solutions in protecting their soldiers at the front. This is from Alexander Karchenko, who says, quote, I can confirm a qualitative leap in Ukrainian UAVs. Now transport is being hit at a distance of over 40 kilometers from the front. The number of enemy strike munitions targeting equipment within a 100-kilometer radius of the front has significantly increased. The enemy combines cheap, mass-produced drone strikes with expensive foreign counterparts. Everything that can fly and hit moving equipment, the enemy immediately scales and deploys it on the front line. The installation of anti-drone nets on the Donetsk ring road is a sign that things are serious. Again, it's hard to fully grasp this. If we could have fast forwarded from 2021 or even the opening days of the war to April of 2026, I think the shock would be more intense. But the idea that 100 kilometers from the front line is quickly becoming a danger zone is crazy. Like, that completely changes how warfare can be conducted. When, it's one thing trying to move a truck in Iraq or Afghanistan and there's no front line because of IEDs. It's another, in this case, where there is no safe space. A comparison I often draw to my experiences in Afghanistan is when you got back from a patrol or back from a mission, you're pretty good to go. Like, occasionally there might be a mortar attack. We were in RC South down in Kandahar. There could be mortar attacks. Sometimes, of course, suicide, vehicle-borne, improvised explosive devices could be devastating. They were limited, however. The occasional recoilless rifle. But by and large, when you went into a base, like, you were good to go. That's not the case within 100 kilometers of the front in some areas. That is an entirely different type of warfare. They say, quote, yes, this is a new reality, but that doesn't mean there aren't effective solutions to this threat. First, the process of installing anti-drone nets should be made more technologically advanced. It's painful to watch engineers stretching nets with wooden poles. Their work speed is slow, and the labor costs are enormous. Couldn't we create a modular metal structure that would simplify this process by tenfold? Yes. I mean, when we see the nets that are going up, it's often fishing nets, relatively inexpensive. A lot of times those are being donated, and they're going up on telephone poles, and it is a slow process, and it takes a lot of work. And the guys that are doing that, you have to imagine, are being targeted by enemy drones throughout the entire process. This is something I've harped on for a while now, and it's so frustrating to see U.S. bases in the Middle East starting to be on the receiving end of FPV drone strikes, and we don't have the nets up. Like, Ukraine and Russia right now are doing this the hard way, right? Because they have to. We have time right now in the United States to do this, find a more efficient way of doing it. As the milblogger here says, a modular metal structure. I feel like there's a business opportunity to be had there somewhere for someone smarter than I. He says, secondly, we need to remember that we have armored vehicles. Recent losses could have been avoided if the personnel had been traveling in armored vehicles. I understand that a stripped down BTR or BMP is simple and cheap, but a single hit and the entire crew turns into mincemeat. These are the attacks we've seen. It's the decision that Russia made a while ago, was to continue pushing attacks forward. They had more infantry, more motorcycles, more cars, pickup trucks than they did BMPs or BTRs. So if you need to push 17 assaults forward today, you might not have 17 BMPs. All right, so they're either moving on foot, or if it's a long distance, maybe they get a motorcycle. That was the trade-off that Russia has made now for some time. We are starting to see more armored vehicles used in some of these pushes, but it's a slow trickle back in that direction. And again, it's going to be a trade-off because Russia they have a lot more men to expend than they do equipment at this point. Now, to be clear, that's not to say they are running short on BMPs or BTRs or tanks or anything, but the loss rate when they move forward cannot be paired with how often they are conducting assaults. That rate of loss is not sustainable. He says, thirdly, we can't rely on all-powerful electronic warfare. Only physical interception can reduce the number of enemy drones and strike drones. Yes, they gain impressive speed at the final stage of their journey, but for most of the route, they fly at a reasonable speed, so more radars and more interceptors, that is the way to solve the problem. Again, just from the beginning of the conflict to today, where there was limited electronic warfare, now it's widespread across every area. But even then, that is not enough to bring down all of the drones. They have to find ways to actually shoot them down out of the sky. In some cases, that's a guy with a shotgun. That is not preferable. That is not ideal. That is not easy. It's so frustrating to see people see these clips of an FPV drone coming in, accelerating towards the soldier who's maybe in the back of a pickup truck bouncing along, and the guy shoots down that FPV. And people say, well, that's easy. That's the move. Everybody carry a shotgun. Problem solved. It is so incredibly difficult to hit a small moving drone at speed as it accelerates while you're moving. Anyways, there's still some solutions to be had there. We talked to the Bluebird Group guys a couple of days ago that do the Choika drone detector, and they talked about some countermeasures they're working on right now around the fiber optic drone threat. So hopefully they'll roll something out here before too awful long. That, of course, would be pretty interesting to see. Now, I owed you guys a quick update on a fundraiser. We just kicked off phase 2 with Car for Ukraine, which is why I'm rocking my new Car for Ukraine shirt. This came in the mail 2 days ago. So perfect timing. Now, if you'll recall, 2026, we were running a big campaign, 430,000 euros, and we wrapped up the first one in February. So the first one, we went over the goal, 121,000. We just rolled out the spring offensive. So we're kind of doing this every other month. And this is to help a couple different units. So 104th Territorial Defense Brigade, the Seraphims. And on this page, link in the description and in the first pinned comment, you can learn about these units, because we've got the Seraphims. Incredible video here, by the way. I'm going to do kind of a reaction to this shortly, but it shows how the trucks are being used in Ukraine, the chaos of getting into and out of some of these fighting positions. We've got a nice video from the Seraphims to you all. And in this campaign, we're actually helping pick up a couple vehicles for the 1st Battalion 8th Special Purpose Regiment. So a friend over there kind of made that connection. These guys reached out asking for some help. So more patches, again, in this one, some unique ones. They're doing a good job, I think, Car for Ukraine, kind of designing different patches here as well, pretty unique ones. But again, link in the description and pinned comment. I know we're going to knock this one out of the park pretty quickly and help these guys out. Every week for 2 months now, we've got vehicle deliveries coming in. We're able to share pictures and videos of the soldiers receiving this equipment and putting it immediately to use. So your impact is having an immediate, very real impact. Your impact is having your contributions are having a very real impact on the battlefield in a very short period of time. So from the bottom of my heart, for anybody who has or is given to these campaigns, thank you so much. All right, so turning to the deep strike carried out overnight by Ukraine, Magyar Birds released this footage here, where they say on the night of April 6th, SBS Birds struck the frigate Admiral Makarov in the port of Novorossiysk and delivered a bit of incendiary fire to the Savash drilling rig. They say the operation was carried out by the birds of the 1st Control Center of the Unmanned Systems Forces, planned and coordinated by the Security Service of Ukraine. The extent of the damage is being determined. I've not seen anyone yet say that ship was sunk. In fact, Rybar, Russian media here, says based on the published video, it is difficult to say for certain whether there was an impact. The footage cuts off just meters from the combat ship, so it's possible that the drone may have been shot down by rifle squads on the base during its approach, and the strike may have been avoided. Again, no clear confirmation at this point that the ship was hit from what I've seen, let alone sunk, but definitely targeted. The Kyiv Post added to this, saying the primary target was actually the oil terminal. They say it's a key export hub for Ural, Siberian light, and Kazakh crude. In peacetime, they say the port handled roughly 25 to 35% of Russia's crude exports. Even during the war, it is estimated to account for around 20% of Russian exports. So this looks to be the most significant Ukrainian drone attack on that oil infrastructure, that specific location, to date. In terms of why, I think there was a great assessment here from a friend, Woofers, over on X. I'll have his account linked in the description below. He said the Ukrainian goal these past several weeks is to ensure that the Russians cannot rebuild their economy from windfall profits as a result of the Gulf War, or the ongoing fighting in the Middle East. He says as a result, they have massively damaged Russian oil exports from the Gulf of Finland while now shifting their eyes to the Black Sea. As well, the Ukrainians are targeting Russian refineries and chemical plants affiliated with the petrochemical industry to further damage the Russian economy, increasing capex costs, which will need to be reinvested in repairs while also limiting production as well as extraction. Taken together, this greatly limits Russian exports and reduces their profits while also setting the stage for additional strikes that aim to eliminate exports from European Russia entirely. Russia is being decarbonized by force because if they are not, their profits from global oil and gas shortages will buoy their floundering economy, enabling Moscow to continue to prosecute their war of conquest. So more than ever before, with the oil shortages due to the fighting in the Middle East and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, this is an opportunity for Russia to make more money than ever. And you've seen that assessment where Iran is able to charge more for their oil because there's so little coming out. It's the same idea. There's just less supply right now, so anybody who has supply can charge a higher price. Russia is one of those. So what Ukraine is doing right now, attempting to do, is to make sure that Russia cannot benefit from this temporarily or this possible temporarily short-term windfall where countries around the world are willing to pay much, much more than previous because there's such a shortage of fuel in the first place. So Ukraine is adapting to that current fight in the Middle East, which is why we have seen and continue to see a lot of targeting of Russian oil infrastructure over the course of the past couple weeks. But that's all we got for now. Again, for those interested and able, we've got the ongoing fundraiser with Car for Ukraine, trying to help out a couple different units right now fighting in the South and the East. That link is in the description and pinned comment below. But thanks for watching. We'll see y'all next time.